All right. Good evening, everybody. I am starting another installment of program that I made, the 12 steps. I got something wrong here. We're not recording yet. All right. Yeah. We're recording. Yeah, we definitely are. So anyway, starting on another episode of the 12 Steps Universal Program. This is about the fourth or the fifth video. And I'm on the fourth step, which I began last night, August the 3rd. And so my intentions today is to go over the fourth step again, just to pretty much vocalize it. And then move on from here. So first we talked about on the first step was we started off at the foundation for the program. The foundation for the program is starts off with honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. In some literature, it says, "With these, we are well on our way." But the AA program do confirm that honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. However, I like to note that an attitude of intolerance or indifference towards spiritual principles would defeat us in our recovery. And the spiritual principles that it's basically talking about is the honesty, the open-mindedness, and the willingness, which are considered the keys to the step, and also any any as you go through the steps, certain spiritual principles will be introduced. You know, like loving, caring, patience. We talked about tolerance. We talked about indifference, and so forth. Now, as I said before, this particular step here, this particular program, as I'm laying it out, is for a person that's been around for at least three to 4 months and more, and they understand the jargon of the program. And when I say the program, I mean Alcoholics Anonymous, I mean Narcotics Anonymous, I mean Fellowship Anonymous, I mean Overeaters Anonymous, Gambling Anonymous, and any other anonymous that the individual that speaks to the disease of addiction. Because remember, the disease of addiction is more than just the use of a drug or a chemical or even a behavior. The disease of addiction is mainly centered around obsessive and compulsive behavior. And whatever that obsessive and compulsive behavior, then there's a symptom that emanates from the behavior. For example, if a person is a drug addict, then it's drugs. If they're an alcoholic, then it's alcoholic. Then it's alcohol. If a person is an overeater, then it's food. They become obsessed and compulsive over food. If a person is a gambler, then of course we know it's gambling, casinos, cars, and in any game of chance. Yeah. And then we can always go down to some people are addicted to a lifestyle, a certain type of lifestyle, maybe a lifestyle that includes violence or doesn't have to include violence. It can include just a lavish lifestyle. People can be addicted to that. Another form of the addiction is fantasy. You know, some people like to fantasize. So and then in the fantasy addiction, you know, people tend to create their own quote unquote world, and they can create their own truth. You know, when I hear people talking about my truth, this is my truth. Yeah, it's your truth. But what is it based on? Is it based on fantasy, fiction? Remember that it was a program out a long time ago called Fantasy Island, and people would, I guess they would take a trip to this island and live out a fantasy. So back to tonight's program, where I'm talking about going into the fourth step. And so moving on was the first step. And the first step, now let me say this. In order to approach this step, a person has to be clean or have to establish a clean time on their particular symptom: drugs, gambling, sex, food, fantasy, and so forth. So you have to establish a clean time. And usually clean time is established in 90 days, by the first 90 days of not picking up or using that particular symptom. So I'm saying this to say is clean time has to be established before step one can be approached effectively. Because a lot of times people says that, well, you know, step one means that you don't have to use anymore. Well, step two means you don't have to use anymore. Step three means you don't have to use anymore. Step four means you don't have to use anymore, so forth and so forth and so forth. However, like I said, to approach the program spiritually in a spiritual manner, or to prepare for it, the individual have to establish some clean time from their primary symptom. At step one, we look at how the primary symptom plus a few other factors affected the individual. When the admission of, we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction or alcohol, that our lives had, and remember, had become unmanageable. And what's happening at this point, I'm looking how I conducted my life mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally on a day-to-day basis with my primary symptom and the behaviors that the primary symptom affected. In step two, I'm looking at the insanity part, where step two says we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And let me say at this point, I like to, interject in here, that alcohol, drugs, food, whatever your primary symptom, is a power greater than yourself. And I don't have to go, and I don't even think there's no debate about that. So alcoholism and addiction are powers greater than the individual. All right. And so it's expressed in step one by the admission of powerlessness and unmanageability. Now, a lot of times people think that, so, well, I kept a job, I paid my bills, and they look at that as a sense of manageability. Well, it is. However, were you effective as you could be? Were you effective as you could be? Could have been, I'm sorry. Were you effective that you could have been with this addiction type thing? As far as your, your primary symptom goes. So moving on, the unmanageability is a direct indication of the insanity that's going on inside the individual's life. Now, as I understand this or admit this in the step one, what happens is I become open in the step two process. And I said it's a process because coming to believe as a result of step one is usually back and forth. A major hindrance for a lot of individuals is the denial. It's the denial that keep them sick. And part of that denial is, well, you know, I had a job, and I maintained my job. I paid my bills. I ate every day. I wasn't like that person on the street over there. Those are good. Those are indicators. But like I said earlier, were you effective as you could have been? Most likely no. But then we look at some other factors. Your social life, your spiritual life, your emotional makeup. How were you emotionally? How were you mentally? Even your physical appearance. What was your physical appearance like? These are indications of unmanageability and also an indication of the individual's sanity. That's why in the second step it says could. And the condition is could because it's going to be proportional to the individual's denial and also their willingness to want to be restored to sanity, because a lot of people don't want to be restored to sanity. So some people might say, well, Suni, what is sanity? What is it? And simply, it's just how an individual conduct their lives on a daily basis, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally balanced. And we'll move off into that a little later. So gaining some faith that when the mind is open and the first step of mission is made, the individual can say, okay, I see where my primary symptom landed me in jail. I almost died. I almost end up in a mental institution. And some of us actually experienced those. They went to jail. They almost died. Ended up in a mental institution. And I'm going to include a 28-day treatment center. You OD'd. Some of us OD'd when the drugs and the alcohol was involved. Some of us ate so much that we had to, we was overweight. We ended up in the hospital because the doctor told us, you got diabetes or different types of ailments that comes from overeating. Even our family members told us, hey, man, you can't push yourself away from the table. And our answer was just one more bite. Inside the gambling thing, the gambling was, I took my check was $500, and I went to the casino because I felt like I could double that, triple that. And in the long run, and not even in the long run, the run wasn't even that long. But when I came home, I had to go see the money man. I had to borrow from my friends and my relatives to get my rent paid. And I suffered a lot of losses from family members. Inside fantasy, I lived in a make-believe world. Just that simple. And that's what I held on to. I might have went to work. I might have paid my bills. I might not have went to the casino. But you want to know what? My life was unmanageable because didn't nobody really want to be around me. So moving on. Step 2 says, I am going to change my way of living and thinking. I'm going to change my way of thinking and living based on the evidence that I saw inside of step 2 and step 1. So I make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. And turning my will over is looking at my own self-centeredness, total self-centeredness, and my obsession and my compulsion to whatever my underlying symptom was or is. Thank you. So moving on. At this point, I'm prepared to look at my life. how did all of this stuff happen? And so I sit back and I turn around and I go to the fourth step. And inside the fourth step, it says, we made a decision to, no, I'm sorry. Inside the fourth step, it says, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. But hold on, I just want to back up one thing. When I make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, as I understand them, what happens is in the process of this step, moving on to step 4, I'm going to experience a certain amount of freedom. Insanity, depravity, depression, these are some more of the symptoms of the disease of addiction. And notice I said depression and death. So I'm on the way to living. However, the condition is that I be willing to give up my way of thinking. The principles that I use, that I've been using, and to learn some principles. However, before I can learn some principles, I got to take an inventory. And the inventory is not so much that I did bad, that I robbed and pillaged and raped and did a lot of, I ended up in prison or in jail, or I led a lifestyle that was not conducive, that was antisocial. No, it's not so much as that. It's just the principles that I live by. It's not so much that what happened to me when I was a little boy. I was molested or raped or all that. Those are good indicators. And we'll get into that later in the following step. But right now, all I'm trying to do is to create an inventory of what my life was like. It's not a blame, on my daddy or my mother or society or the president. No, it's not. What it is just how, in my mind, in my thinking, that my life was. All right, I got to take a little drink here. This is coffee. So, and at this time, I'm going to take a little time out and say, I have a call-in number in case anybody might want to call in. It is 317-344-9752. That's 317-344-9752. And you can call in anytime because I am open for discussion. But however, we're going to move on. So inside the 4-step process, what I'm doing is, and I could write a autobiography, or I could just write a list of what I feel like my character was, some good stuff over here in one column and some negative stuff in another column. But the bottom line is just start writing the inventory. That's all I need to do. Just start writing that inventory. And once I start writing the inventory, then I can move on and set the stage for what? For recovery. Because step 1, 2, and 3, along with the honesty and the open-mindedness and willingness, lay the foundation for me to start recovering. And at the step 4 point, this will be the foundation of my recovery. And it'll be an ongoing process for the rest of my life. Now, that being said, I look at my character defects and shortcomings. That's what I'm looking for. And how they were created through different experiences in my life. And I give one time, I got one that I always use for myself. And I remember when I was growing up, I used to get home alone. Let's just say I was home alone a lot. Know what I mean? I was home alone a lot. And what happened was I would get hungry. So I would go down to the corner store and get some chips or some pop. And I would, steal me some chips, steal me some pop or whatever. And in the process of stealing, I had me something to eat. Well, stealing had became a survival tactic. Because I learned, I would just go steal once I stole something to eat, and I was full, I was cool, Whether it was potato chips and pop, which was my favorite. Well, it wasn't so much it was favorite, it was easy to get, or bologna or whatever it was. And then, so stealing became a survival tactic for me. I learned how to steal based on what? Based on being left alone. Not because I went to steal something or I was looking to steal. It's because I was at home alone and I didn't have no money. And I was hungry. And the corner store, Swads, I never will forget Swads. And Swads was a place that you can go that, that was easy to go to, And I went in there and I steal. So I learned stealing at an early age based on being hungry, based on learn how to survive. But once I ate, I was cool. Or if there was some food left in the house, I ate that. Or I would go over to somebody else's house. But if I didn't have no other options, I would just go take the food. So stealing became a part of my survival tactic. However, when I ran to the streets and I started living in the streets, I turned that survival tactic into abuse. I start, stealing from people, places, people and places. So I took a survival tactic and turned it into something else. Lying and manipulate. I remember one time I got caught stealing. And my mama asked me, she said, yeah, the man at the store told me you was down there stealing. Was you stealing? I told her no. And I told her no because I was afraid. And what was I was afraid of? Get my butt beat. So of course I'm gonna say no. Yeah. So fear induced lying. Fear induced lying. It wasn't so much that I was a liar, it's that I was afraid. And what was I afraid of? Some pain. So then at that point, I learned about lying. So do you see how inside the fourth step, writing down certain things, how I can look at how I start doing stuff. Because in the fifth step, and I'm gonna dive into it a little bit, it says we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So I just talked about stealing. I just talked about lying. Well, the exact nature was the fear of pain, and also I looked at being hungry. So do you see how this fourth step worked? And at the time, I like to move into the fifth step. So actually, step 4 and step 5 goes together. One names the defect, and the other one tells you how it got started. Now, let's say this. I like to add on too. When I'm writing out, let's say I took the biography approach, and I'm a man that got molested. Yes, I did. At a young age, I did. I got molested. Family member. Oh yeah. Let me add that one in there too. And what happened was, what that did to me was, I learned how to distrust people. Because see, when I was growing up, family was everything. Family, your cousins, your brothers, your aunts, your uncles, and what happened with me was, I got touched by a family member. And the result is I learned how not to trust people and allow people to get close to me. Like when that happened, it was hard for me to become intimate with a woman, let alone another man. You know, although I wanted to, in my well, first let me back up because I want to talk about a thing called denial, which is a key obstacle in the recovery process. When I had what happened to me happen to me, when I got molested, you know, the first place I went was, nah, this did not happen. This did not happen. And then fear set in. The fear of somebody finding out. Shame, guilt. Oh yeah. All that set in. So I started experiencing this stuff at a young age. So fear, shame, guilt, anger, which turned into resentment. And I'm going to take this to the next level. So the person that did this to me threatened to tell. But they didn't threaten. They told the story their way as to what happened. So a lot of shame and guilt kicked in because I was teased. So how I handled that was I ran. I learned how to run. I become a runner. I became a runner. I left that side of town. I left those set of friends alone. And I left a lot of family alone. If I didn't feel that I was safe around individuals, I wouldn't go around them. Yeah. So inside the fourth step, when I write out certain things, I'm not, and let me say this. So inside the recovery process, I keep I keep that person as a John Doe. I protect them with anonymity because what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the situation to see how I got a certain way and how I develop certain principles. That's right. How I develop certain principles to live or to exist or to survive by. Just like when people say they're survivors, I understand what that means. I definitely understand. I understand how the addiction of fantasy, of fantasizing, affect my life. Like I like Star Trek and Star Wars and several other, there's a reason behind that. Because when what happened to me, I went into a fantasy world. Denial took in. I denied that happened for a long, long time. Long, and I'm talking about decades. And so, and I got to get myself together behind it. So anyway, moving on. So what the step 4 and the step 5 process does, what I'm doing is when I'm writing this inventory, I'm writing down certain things that happened in my life, and I don't have to put a person's name in it. I just looking at the situation that happened to see how I develop certain principles as a living skills, or how I navigated using principles that was not conducive for a healthy person, and at the same time, how I became an unhealthy person. You understand what I'm saying? So moving on, step 4, which says we made a fearless, and that's part of the fearless part. When I look at certain things that happened to me that was not my fault, and me being the victim of circumstances, that's fearless. and searching. Searching and fearless. Because the step says we made a searching and fearless moral inventory. And inside the moral part don't mean that I'm blaming. Well, I was right and they was wrong. The moral part is that what happened, and I'm looking at it as that's how it's happening. I was not right. It was not a right or wrong thing for, in my part. I'm put my little crystal out. I got crystal, so I'm putting it out. So that's how that is. Step 4, step 5. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And then in 5, we says we admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being. So I don't, you know how some people they'll say, well, God knows, so I ain't got to tell her. No, I want to read that out loud. And I could read it. When I'm reading it out loud, it's 2 in 1. For me and God. I can read it for myself. That's the admission to myself. Then to God, now another human being. And the human being that I took several, it was several 4th steps and 5th steps with. It's been different people since I've been around for so long. However, I would like to say is that the individuals that I take these steps with, they tend to identify with what happened, or they're not judgmental. They say, well, who was it? Tell me who was it? Well, what's the person's name? It's not that type of party. What it is just I'm sharing experiences, number 1, to get what we call free. Number two, to also examine the principles that I had developed to live by. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Let me drink some coffee. So moving on, now, as you can see, what's happening is in these 2 steps, a cleansing process is taking place. I am cleansing, I'm getting that icky, goopy, gobby stuff out. That's the part where the human comes in at. I'm hitting it on the spiritual level. That's the God of my understanding. And the emotional and the mental level and the physical level is from myself and the other human being. And from my experiences, I have never done a 4th step where it was a blame game or somebody was telling me, you shouldn't have done this. Usually people identify. So moving on is the purpose of these 2 steps, the 4th and the 5th step, and I done just automatically went into the 5th step. I was trying to do the 4th step. So anyway, through the admission to God, myself, and another human being for the exact nature of the wrong. It's not me being wrong. The say I did is how the exact nature is, how did this wrong get started? How did this get started? It's not so much that I'm a thief or a liar or a murderer. When I was little and growing up, and people would ask me, they say, hey, what you want to be when you grow up? I never said I want to be a murderer or I want to get molested or I want to be a drug addict or alcoholic or I just want to spend my life wasting away in a fantasy land. No, I never said that. I said I want to be a fireman. I want to be a bus driver. I want to be an army man. These were my innocence, really. And at the same time, they were things of substance. I had some substance going on inside my life. So moving on with this 5th, 4th, and this 5th step, what it's doing is I'm starting to getting some stuff out because it's setting the stage for spiritual growth. for me to change. I can't, you can't, look, you can't put perfume on top of doo-doo, or you can't put something good on top of doo-doo and don't expect for it to stink. You got to move that. You got to get that doo-doo out. And you better be telling somebody about that doo-doo. You know what I'm saying? And I'm trying to keep this situation as clean as possible. I'm trying to keep this this recovery thing as clean as possible. Because don't let everybody cuss. So anyway, the fourth and the fifth step is getting some of that garbage up so I could put some principles up in there. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And also, my faith in the God of my understanding is growing. Faith in the program is growing. Faith in spiritual principles is growing because in this step, in both these steps, honesty is at the head of the fourth step. Trust and willingness are the foundations, plus there's more spiritual principles to come inside the fifth step. That's what's happening. Now, I'm going to move on. I thought I was going to be a while with this. Because, see, with this, let me take a stop for a moment. In this presentation that I'm doing of the 12-step program, it's a place I'm trying to go to. And I ain't saying I'm trying. I am going to. And what I have to do before I can go is cover all the steps before I can go to the next level of 12-step recovery. Because 12-step recovery, if the more the individual submits to the program, by the time you get to the 12th step, there's a calling. There is a calling for you. You will be called. And some of us might even get called before we even get to the 12th step. We get to step 10, and you find people they want to become recovery coaches, doctors, lawyers, preachers. They become servants of the community, such as politicians and Lord knows what else. But however, inside the 12-step recovery process, what happens is the focus is on me, and I'm learning how to become a more spiritual person by implementing spiritual principles in my life. So anyway, in step 6 say we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And the defects of character, like I said, they started in that fourth step inventory. They were discussed and pinpointed inside the fifth step. And there was some more inventory going on there. And that's why it says these defects of character. And the removal is not all at once. No, it's the ones that's hindering me in the here and now. Remember, recovery is in the moment. It's always in the moment. It's never behind you. It's never in front of you. It's right here. It's in the here and the now. And let me say another thing about recovery. Recovery is not based on what if. This is straight out the literature. What if and if only. Recovering people, we don't deal with what if. Well, what if this? Well, what if that? No, we deal with what is and here and now. That's recovery. Well, what if we don't deal with what if you want to go deal with what if, then go be a scientist or something that's trying to find they deal with hypothesis. Because what we found out about what if as a fellowship and as a whole And as a recovering community, what if and if only takes you to too many doors, too many scenarios, and we ain't got time for that. You know what I'm saying? We trying to get some relief around this joint. So anyway, inside the sixth step it says, we were entirely ready. That means we became ready. And how did we become ready? When I wrote that inventory down, and I revealed that inventory with God, myself, and another human being. When I revealed that, I became ready. So from step one, from honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, what happened was my attitude got better because I got some hope from the previous steps, from working the previous steps. That's what the deal is, and that's what's happening. So anyway, moving on. Once I started going over my character defects and my shortcomings, what happens is God said, okay, young man, sir, or old man, or whatever, this is what's going to happen. I'll remove them all, but not all at one time. Only the ones that's hindering you right now, in the here and now. Right now, in the here and now. Those are the ones that I'm going to. So it's important that I not use any dope, no drinking, no overeating, no sex. And I love sex, right? But anyway, I stay clean. And what's going to happen inside this step, it's going to show me why. It's going to give me an indication of why I use what I use all the way down to the fantasy. And I want to stop and talk about the addiction of fantasy for a second. Remember early on in this segment, I talked about being left alone, dangerous thing. Don't leave your kids alone. And what happened was because I was so angry about being left alone as a child, what I would do is I would create characters, friends. And I would also create not only friends, but I would create scenarios and situations in my life to make me what? Feel better. To feel better. So it's safe to say that my first addiction was fantasy. That was my first drug. I'm just talking about me. Fantasy was my first drug. Imagining that everything around me was okay, and I supported that by my own creativity. Yes, I did. You know. Then I moved on to other stuff. Then, the food, the being hungry and this and that came in. But also lying. See, fantasy is lying. Yes, it is. Fantasy is definitely lying to oneself. And what is that? What's another component of that? How about denial? It's safe to say that lying, denial, and fantasy are all correlated. So let's jump back up to step 6. So it says we were entirely ready to have God. Now check this out. Like I said before in the third step, God is not going to just come to my, God is just not going to come and grab me by the hand and lead me away from anything. I got some work to do. Why? Because when you do work, you're going to appreciate, you should anyway, appreciate what you've earned. or what's yours? Just like my car, my wife, my wife makes me work, and I appreciate her. I love you, baby. I had to tell her that. She up there on the phone talking with her girls and stuff. So anyway, I hope anyway. My kids, I work for them. So I don't treat them like I own them. I appreciate them. That comes with yeah, that comes with a lot of work, you know. My job, I go to work, and I do the best I can. I do the best I can. But I do appreciate my job. I do, man. Yep. Community corrections, I appreciate y'all, man. For real. Y'all might not think so. And how I show my appreciation is I come to work every day. My attendance is probably about 95%. And I make an extra effort to get along with my coworkers. That's right. And I do my job. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Because I know somebody is I know the airways have ears. But anyway, moving on, man. Let's move on. Let me take some coffee right here. Because I got about 10 minutes left and we need to get this wrapped up. About 15 more minutes. So anyway, inside the sixth step, it says we became ready. And how I become ready is I look at my inventory. I talk with God, I talk with myself, and I talk with another human being. And I listen to the input, And sometimes you don't need no input. You just need somebody just to listen. And let me say that, because sometimes I done seen people give up, they want to give out this criticism they ain't got no right to give. But anyway, let me stay up off that. And that's how I become ready, because I've heard myself. I've went over with another human being the exact nature of the wrong, and I understand that a lot of inside the exact nature in the fifth step, that a lot of that stuff just ain't my fault. And I say, okay, God, I'm ready to be restored to sanity. You see how step 2 done faded up in there? Now, the next time I go through these steps, what I'm going to do is I hope to expand on my studio a little bit, and I'm going to put a little easel up there, and I'm going to learn this stuff how I was taught a long, long, long time ago, Mike Johnson. Yes, sir. Yes, you did. So anyway, moving on. All it's saying is that I'm ready. I haven't necessarily stopped doing anything. I'm just ready, man. I'm saying, okay, enough is enough. Just like I did with my primary symptom. I said, I don't want another drink. I don't want another pill. I don't want no more fantasy. I don't want to live in a dream la land anymore. I'm tired of being a liar and a deceiver to myself. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm tired of the overeating, being using, abusing myself. I'm tired of the gambling, thrill seeking. That's all gambling is. One more hit. I just want to hit one time. I know I can get the jackpot. Same thing as a dope fiend or an alcoholic. I just want one more drink. And I ain't gonna drink no more. The sex addict. I ain't never been too much of a sex addict, but I don't know. Don't ask my wife though. So anyway, let me move on with this here. So anyway, I become ready. And inside the ready, I've surrendered in step 1 again. I looked at my insanity in step 2 again, and I made another decision again, a step 3, based on step 4 and step 5. And so what happens is, I just go live my life normal, day to day to day, and boom, what happens? I start that stuff starts popping up. And I humbly ask God to remove what? What it says. I humbly ask God to remove my shortcomings. Because my defects, see, when the different in step 6, I said we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Sorry, I left that out. And let me say this too about this presentation. I don't sit back and go over this stuff and take notes. Nah. So I'm going basically raw. So anyway, keep going back. Going back to step 6. It says we were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. And these defects of character are the ones that I wrote about in my 4-step inventory. Some of them popped up during the 5th step. Yeah, because remember, I'm constantly inventorying myself. So in step 6, these are the ones that's being pointed to. The ones that I wrote about, that I talked about, those are the ones that's being that I am talking about. Now, will God remove them all at once? No. Oh, no. It ain't gonna be like, bam, they gone. It's not gonna happen like that. How this thing is gonna happen is day to day, in the moment, as I live my life, and as I go through certain things, certain situations pop up, and I say, God, take this fear away from me about losing this job, or this woman not getting with me, or the courts coming after me, or the fear of my own damn self. Yeah, the manipulation. Then, in one instance, this is my experience. This is how these things happen for me. They happen for me as I live my life. And I'm not afraid anymore. Because remember, in the 3rd step, what did the 3rd step promise? It says, we no longer, and I'm paraphrasing this in 1/3 step literature. It says, insanity, depression, depravity, death, we get free from. And the freedom shows up in step 7. It starts to show up in step 7. Excuse me. Step 4, 5, 6, and step 7. So moving on, we look at, so I asked God, inside the 7th step, it says we humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. And a lot of times, you know, and I'm just gonna say how it works for me. How it works for me, I say, God, I don't want to lie to these people anymore. You know, I don't want to lie to my wife or my kids anymore out of fear. Out of fear. I don't want to be angry anymore. I don't be, you know, because somebody put their hands on me in a certain way. You know, God, I'll just take this resentment out of my life. And remember what I talked about earlier, what a resentment was. A resentment, okay, anger. You have anger. That's in the moment. And anger is emotion that let us know that something's wrong in the moment. It's like pain. Somebody pinch you, you have a sensation. That sensation is called pain. Well, in anger, somebody does something to you mentally, the sensation is called anger. What resentment is when I hold on to that anger for an extended period of time. And in the recovery community, a lot of us call it 90 days. You say, if you mad about 90 days, some people say a week. If you mad for a week about something, you became resentful. And it starts what? Eating away at you like a cancer. You know, or yeah, like a cancer. So back to resentment. I say, God, I don't want to be resentment. I don't want to be angry no more. And what happens is a miracle take place. And I learned a new set of principles, or a principle of forgiveness could step in, or a principle called love or mercy. Have some mercy, not only on myself, for that person. Do you see how we start implementing spiritual principles? The universal spiritual principles start creeping in. So I'm going to move on to another step, because I'm not, like I said, I'm going someplace with this, and I got a few minutes left. Inside, the next step is step 8. It says, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. To them all. So what happens at this point in the recovery process, I make a list. I make a list, and I'm just going to say this. This is how I did it. Do it the way you want to. First, I put me on that list. Then I put God, I put mother, I put sister, father, brother. I put everybody that I did some harm. I ain't talking about the people that harmed me. I'm talking about the people that I harmed. I put them on that list. And what I did was I looked at our relationship. I looked at the relationship. And my mama, I put my mother on the list. And I looked at our relationship. So it was like a little inventory on how that relationship supposed to be from son to mother. I put my father on the list. I put my brother on the list. I put my sister on the list. I put my stepmama on the list. I put my stepbrother on the list. And I looked at how those character defects, check this out, those character defects in step 5 and 6 affected our relationship. Oh yeah. That's how step 8 went. I made a list of all persons that I had. So I went down the list. Now I suggest this. Don't go making a whole list. Don't go making a whole list. Everybody you knew, and I did this and I did that. No. All I suggest is, start off kind of small. Start off kind of small and get some experience. Get some 9th step experience. So anyway, when I made the list with my mother and my grandmama, big mama, with my big mama, Willie Gwen, I looked at that we had a relationship called grandson and grandmama and mother and son, and how that relationship really was. And I asked myself at the end of the inventory, was I really a son? Was I really a grandson? Is this what grandsons do? Now I'm looking at my my character defects and my shortcomings that was revealed to me in step 4, 5, in step 4 and step 5. And how I expanded on them in step 5, what they were in step 6, and how they affected my relationship in step 7 and in step 8, and especially in step 8. So we look at the relationships. And then I made a determination. Should that person be on the list? Now I heard somebody said this, right? They said, well, yeah, I had stole money from the dope man and stole liquor from the liquor store. Do I go back and make amends? Certain amends will happen like this. Oh, I know went too fast. I done went into step 9, so let me slow up. So anyway, let me back up off the step a little bit and kind of like stay into step 8. So when I make the list and I look at the relationship of the people I look at what the relationship was, the validity of the relationship, the spirituality of the relationship. And even if it was a relationship worth saving. Because when I move into the ninth step, as I move into the ninth step, and the ninth step says, we make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so will injure them or others. Will injure them or others. We make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so will injure them or others. So let's take a stop right here. So like I said, inside of the eighth step, when I made my list and I examined the relationships, I said, okay, I'll examine my character defects. But let's say I had somebody on that list, in which I did, that we had a relationship, but it was based on game playing. It was based on street stuff. You know, at this point, I make a determination what type of amends I'm gonna make, or do that person need amends? I don't make no amends to no dope man. Now, if I owe him some money, I'm gonna pay him because I want my life, right? But however, that relation is terminated. It's through. It's out. Any type of relationship like hoes, like people that I had a relationship, it was just based on getting high, or based on gambling, or based on us going to the restaurant and eating up a storm, or somebody supporting my fantasies and I'm supporting their fantasies. Those relationships are not substantive. Am I saying that right? Substantive relationships. So they based on game, right? So moving on, and I'm about to wrap this. I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna stop at the 10th step. So I'm gonna stop. I'm not gonna do the 10th step. That's what I mean. So until tomorrow. So anyway, at the list, when I look at it, it's gonna determine who's going to get a ninth step and who's not. Now I'm gonna say this. On that list, I put myself. I put myself on the list, and I look at what type of relationship I have with myself. I remember when I talked about the fantasies and I had a life. I had a relationship with myself based on fantasy, lying to myself, self-manipulation. But I also had a very good relationship with myself because I had some desires and I had some goals. And I accomplished a few of them. But I was not effective as I could be based on some character defects and shortcomings that I had that would not allow me to see myself clearly. All right, so let's move on. So inside the eighth step, I made my list. I understand that I had some people in my life that I didn't do too well by, me being one of them. And I also put God on there too. Because I cursed God. I sure did. I cursed God and everything that had to do with God, because in my mind, God, a lot of this stuff that I went through was your fault. You could have helped me avoid this stuff, and you didn't. That's right. So my character defect of blaming people, places, and things for my shortcomings and my character defect. So I step into step 9. When I'm stepping into step 9, it said, we make direct amends. Now let me say this. Amends in the recovery process is more than just I'm sorry. No, that's only a piece of it. That's only a piece of it. What happens is a direct amends is this. I change that behavior. I apply spiritual principles. That's right. As far as myself is concerned, excuse me, I had to learn how to forgive myself. But to maintain that forgiveness, I had to put spiritual principles in place that's going to change the way I behave. That's right. Because remember, one key component of addiction is total self-centeredness. It's about me. I have to learn how to be selfless, be a selfless person. And so inside of step 9 says we make direct amends to such people. It says wherever. It don't say whenever. Wherever means I don't go looking for nobody. Like people say, well, I went over to my uncle's house and hell no. You don't go looking. It's wherever. When you see your uncle, because you might go over your uncle, he put something on you that you don't want. Or you go over that lady's house and she put something on you you don't want. And some of us got some bodies out there. So the idea is to protect your own self. The occasion will pop up when the individual is needed to make that type of amends. And that's the verbal part. But the spiritual part is to change the behavior. That's what we change. Oh yeah, and you change the behavior by a spiritual principle. And how do you do that? Well, you made a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understood him way back in the 3rd step. You saw your most obvious insanity, step 2. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves there's the condition, could restore us to sanity. And you bring that one forward. So inside the 9th step, where they say, well, my uncle such and such is dead, and I can't see them no more, or what about people that moved away? Part of that is you could put it in the universe verbally, and I heard about people like writing letters, and burning them and stuff like that. But the main thing you want to do is change that behavior. That's what you want to do, is change the behavior. So moving on, it says, except when to do so would injure them or others. In other words, what injures them means that I don't want to take something up, number one, go on self-will and do whenever instead of a wherever, and then bring something up to somebody that they not prepared for. And they tell you to kiss their ass. Whoops. Or they don't accept your amends, the verbal. Yeah, so you don't want to do that. And also, others is me. I need to protect me. I'm not going to run up to nobody talking about I'm sorry and I done molested you and stole your kids' toys and all that. I'm not going to do that. Or I done robbed you of your rent money and all that, and I'm running up on you talking about, hey, I'm sorry, I took your rent money and you got evicted. Your kids couldn't eat. No. Running up to somebody talking about that. No, you back off. Remember, the steps is designed to protect you. So moving on and wrapping it up with step 9, and I'm going to do step 10 and 11 and 12 maybe tomorrow, because I thought I was going to be this far next week. So inside the 9th step, we made a direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. This program is not getting about you, it's getting you in some trouble. It's about getting you some relief. All right, so today, I like to say, if you got something up out of this, keep coming, because I'm going somewhere with this. I had to lay the 12-step out for people in the recovery community before I bring in some other aspects. Because we're going to be talking about like work. We're going to be talking about uh, masters and message carriers. We're going to talk about what this program really does for the individual that's in our particular modality. And the understanding that this program gives us. Now, am I going to be the one to say that I'm right about everything? No, I'm not going to say that. But what I will say is that I'm bringing something to the table. Click. What is that button that you click when you getting something up out of this? Click subscribe. Please click subscribe. And tomorrow, I'll be on here doing step 10, step 11, and step 12. I will also bring in the traditions, the way Alcoholics Anonymous laid them out, because most fellowship did not change anything. And then I'm going to keep at this because there are some of us out here, we are experiencing a whole new paradigm in this step thing. And what this change has done in the environment that we're in now has allowed some of us to go to certain levels. So at the same time, I want to say thank y'all for listening. I appreciate you. And keep coming back. Keep coming back. Keep coming back. All right, thank you.